Good morning. We're learning as a schusser for Shleima Filan Chaya Baserach, but the Mishnah on the bottom of Pei Aleph Amid Aleph. Ha'aymer Harei Alai Toida. Someone who's makabel, like we've talked in the last couple of blot about the difference in Toidas Chayva and Toidas a regular Toida, Toida Rishus, and the Dava. And a taida of chayva is one where he says, Arei alai chayva, where he says, I'm a kabbalah on myself to bring the taida. So at that point, he doesn't have a choice. It's incumbent upon him to bring the taida. And if he doesn't do so, he's angry on his neder. So the Gemara, the Mishnah says, in that case, when someone was makabel on himself as a chayv that he must bring a taida, yavi hiva lachum and achulin. There's a din that it must be brought from chulin and not from meiser sheni. Meiser sheni is not allowed to be. You're not allowed to use your meiser sheni when a person he has tefua every except for the years when it's meiser on. But the other 4 years he has to take meiser sheni to Yerushalayim, and that meiser that's converted into money. So saying someone who is makabel on himself to bring a taida cannot use his meiser sheni for his lachmei taida. It's not allowed. We'll see. This is going to be in the next Mishnah, which we're hopefully going to get to, maybe not today, hopefully, on Pei Beis Amid Aleph, which says, Minayin la'omer harei alai taida shel yavi el min achulin, tamalei mevzavach Pesach l'Hashem aleikecha tzoyin baka. The Pesach and Baal and Menachos and Izin came out from the Baka. Why does the Torah mention Baka by Pesach? Lakish Chol Abba Menatzayin Baka le Pesach to tell you that everything that goes from Tzayin and Baka is similar to Pesach. Ma Pesach Davar Shebechayve Ebel Menachulin. Since Pesach is something that's Davar Shebechayve and it only comes from Chulin, you can't bring from Meiser Shein. You have Kol Shebechayve Ebel Menachulin. We learn out from Pesach. Now, with the Gemara over there is going to explain where we know that Pesach is only Ba Menachul. But that's the way it goes. The Torah, we're going to see there's a machlekes about where we learn that out from, but Pesach can only be brought from Chulin, it can't be brought from Meiser Sheni. And the Mishnah over there, we learn out from the Bakar that it says by Pesach to tell you that every other carbon that's brought from Tzayin or Bakar, all carbonas, if it comes from it has to be like Pesach. It can only be brought from Chulin, not from if it's a chayva, it can only be brought from Chulin, not from Mais. So that's what we're saying in our Mishnah. He must bring from Chulin. Amid Beis. But if he says, Toida alai min hachulin v'lachma min hamaiser, but if he makes his kiddushin when he's mekadesh, when he makes the neder to bring the taida, and he says, my taida I'm asking it could be from Chulin, but the lachma I wanted to be from Meiser, yavihi v'lachma nachulin. He's still not, that's not going to help him in that case, as we're going to see, because the Chulin, the lechem of a taida, it goes along with the carbon taida. So once the carbon taida has to be menachulin, then the lechem also, even though he tried to make a t'nai and said it's lechem shebin ha'maiser, it still also has to be from chulin. Another case, taida min ha'maiser, the lechem min ha'chulin, but if it's the other way around, he says, I want my taida, my carbon, to come from maiser, which is better for him. My maiser is generally cheaper. It's more restricted, so he's getting double duty out of it. He's both being kind his meiser sheni as well as his chiyuv of a carbon. So I want to use the money from my meiser sheni to buy a taida. But lechem I'm asking to take menachum. Yavihi v'lachem min meiser. Then both the lechem also can come from meiser. He's able to make a t'nai, even though we say that something that's a chayva cannot be brought from meiser. But if he took on the chiyuv with the, and as he was taking on the chiyuv, he said it should be from ma'aser, he could do that. And the lechem follows along with the carbon. I'm sorry, I read that wrong. if he said, I want the Taida to be from Meiser and the Lechem from the Chulin, he should do as he said. The Taida comes from Meiser and the Lechem comes from Chulin. He v'lachom and Meiser, if he said, I want both it and the Lechem to come from Meiser, Yavi, again, he could follow what he said. There's nothing stopping him from making a neder or require requiring himself to bring a taida and it's lechem and saying, but I want it to be able to be brought from mice. So the Mishnah continues, "V'lo yavi mechite meiser sheni el bemois meiser sheni." He's not allowed to take when he's going in these last cases. We made it tonight and we said he could bring the lach taida from meiser. It doesn't mean he could take the actual meiser sheni that he reaped in his field and use it to make the lechem, but rather he should use the money. The Gemara is going to explain why this is the case. Sagt the Gemara. Amar Avuna, ha'aymar harei lachmei toida. Someone who says, I'm a kabbalah myself, lachmei toida, maybe toida v'lachma. Yes, to bring, there's no such thing as bring just lechem of toida by itself. So we understand what he's saying is, I want to bring the toida. So he has to bring the carbon toida along with these lachmei toida that he mentioned. My timer. There's no such thing as having lachmei taida, of having the lechem of the taida without the carbon taida. What he really meant to say is, I'm bringing a carbon taida and it's lechem. That was his way of referring to the carbon taida together with lechem. Lachmei taida, he said the last thing, I'm bringing a lachmei taida, meaning I'm bringing what it needs before that as well as the lachmei taida. So the Gemara seems to understand this, that he's saying that when you say lachmei taida, that he's referring that means the whole thing. It means the entire carbon together with the lachmei taida. The Tanan, the Gemara, taida min ha'maiser. We asked from our Mishnah. We said taida min ha'maiser. If he said, I want my carbon taida to be from meiser, v'lachom and achulin, and my lechem should be from chulin, yavi k'mosher nadam. He should bring it as he said. It means the lechem can only be from chulin, but the taida could be from meiser. Why don't we say that just like we said that Seif Milson Nakat, so over here also say Seif Milson Nakat. He said the lachmei taida should be from chulin. So that's what he merely means to say. He means to say everything should be from chulin. So why do we say Yavi Kamash Nadar that he should bring the first part, that he should bring the carbon min ha'maiser? Now, obviously, this is a shvera kasha because in this case, in the original case, all he said was lachmei taida. So we're saying that means the carbon as well because he didn't say anything about the carbon. But over here, he specifically said he wanted the carbon to come from meiser. And now we're trying to say that because he said that the lachmei taida should from chulin, that should also affect the carbon. So the Rashi, the way Rashi seems to understand this is that because when you say chulin, it could mean either chulin or it could be when you say meiser, it doesn't mean you have to bring from meiser. It means you have the option to bring from meiser, or we could also certainly bring from chulin. So he's saying this should tell us what he meant. That even though he said before it could be from meiser or chulin, what he says at the end, I want the lachmei taida to be from chulin, so he's restricting himself. So say that will also restrict the first one, but it's not really being precise to the first thing he said, it's just further restricting it. And for the Gemara, no. Shani Hasam, the Kivin the Amar Toida min ha'maiser. The Gemara says, but even so, since he said Toida min ha'maiser, Nasakayim ha'rei lechem lifter toidasi shaploini. When he said that he wants the Toida to be from the maiser, so that is saying that that's what he wants for the carbon to be. So then when he says at the end, and lachmei taida should be from chulin, it is as if a person has the ability to say, I want to add on. My friend said he's bringing a taida, I'm going to provide the taida. So he has a certain sense, you're able to bring a taida, lachmei taida on its own. So he treated it in this case as if he intended the taida to be a standalone taida, even though it's not what he's doing. but we don't say that what he said legabe the lachme taida that it should be menachulin should also affect the first part. We treat it as if he had talked about someone else's lachme taida. Fact the Mara ihachi reish tani taida menachulin the lachme namaiser. If he said the other way around, he said he want my taida to come from chulin and the lechem from maiser yavi he belach menachulin. We said it doesn't help that he said he wants the lechem to be able to be brought from maiser, because we make him follow his lechem has to have the same restriction as the carbon. Why don't we say Hachanami Nasik Oimar Re'alai Toida Liptur Lach Mishal Pliny? Why don't we say let's look at the lechem on its own. Let the lechem be able to be brought from Meiser, even though the carbon is brought from Chulin. So the Haki Hashta Bishlam Lechem Lifter Toida Asi Toida Lemifta Lechem Miasya. Like we said before, that's not the case, because like we understand the lechem comes along with the carbon. The carbon does not come along with the lechem. So you can't say that there's going to be a restriction that the chulin, the carbon taida can only be bought from chulin, and the lechem has the option to come from ma'aser. The other way around, you could say I'm not restricting the carbon, but I'm going to restrict the thing that goes along with the carbon. But to say I'm restricting what goes along, that I'm restricting what go with the main carbon, but the lecha that comes along with it, I'm going to be more brave with it and allow that to be more from ma'aser, that you can't do. So Toshma, another kasha on Rav Huna, right? That Rav Huna had said, if someone says I'm bringing lachme taida, it means the both lechem taida as well as the carbon. Someone says I'm bringing a taida without any lechem. V'zevach b'loy nechasim. I'm bringing my oilo or my shlamim, but I don't want to do the nesachim. So the din is that the you may be taida v'lachma zevach nesachim. There's no such thing as bringing a carbon taida without the lechem, and there's no such thing as bringing these karbanos without the nesachim. So we force him to bring the whole thing. So time of the Amar taida. It's only because he said taida. But if he wouldn't have said taida, but rather he would have said lachme taida, it sounds like then we wouldn't be kaif him to bring the whole thing. But according to Rav Huna, even if he says lachme taida, we force him to bring. We say that means he meant to say the whole thing. So no. Who had the nafagav taida? It could be even if he didn't say taida, rather he said lachme taida. But I did the kaboy libis nizevach b'lo nesachim. Since we wanted to say if he brings a carbon without, if he said I want to bring the zevach without the nechasim, he has no option to say if he said I want to bring the nesachim without the zevach, that we force him to bring the zevach with it, because there is such a thing as bringing nesachim on their own. There's no such thing as bringing the carbon without the nesachim, but there is such a thing. A person can be menadav to just bring zvachim. So someone would have said just I'm bringing the nesachim without the zevach, we would allow him to do so. We wouldn't make him bring the carbon along with it. So therefore, Tananami taida. That's why we said taida, even though by taida, according to Rav Huna, really could have said a lachme taida as well. Frak Gemara, a kasha on this, what we just said, that if someone says, I'm bringing a taida without a zevach, without the lechem, or carbon, a zevach without the nesachim, that we force them to bring it. Why don't we say that if someone says I want to bring a carbon, then he says, but I don't want to bring the nesachim, or someone says I want to bring a taida, but I don't want to bring the lechem, let's treat it as a neder, where he said first I want to bring, let's say, the taida, but then then he changed his mind. Pischay is a pesach that the chacham, the bezdin uses to overturn a person's neder. Someone we say that you ask him if he would have known, would you have made this neder? And we let him out of the neder. We're made for the neder, or we're matter the neder. So why don't we say this is also a sort of a heter of the neder, that he made the neder, and then he had immediately teichidei dibriyat charat on it, And then he said, but loy lechem in order to get out of bringing the neder. Amar Chizkiya, so Chizkiya says the reason why we don't say is Hamani Beishamai the Amri Tfois Lashon Harishon. Beishamai holds that once you say something, you cannot be chayzer on it. We seize on the first thing you said. It's not. Harezi nazir min hagroigus min havdvel. Someone says, I want to be a nazir. A nazir is not allowed to be matama and is not allowed to eat grape products. But he says, I don't want it to. I want it to be a nazir from figs and from dates. So, or different types of figs, from the groigus or the dried figs and the dvela, the regular figs. So he's saying from something that has no shaykhs to being a nazir. The minagroigus, the minadvela is not a nazir. That's just a stamina. So Beishamai Arim Nazir. Beishamai says he's a Nazir because since he said Areni Nazir, it doesn't make a difference that he was then tried to be Chayzer by saying Minagroigus Minadvela. We say twice Lashon Rishon. Beisil Arim Ain't Nazir. Beisil says he's not a Nazir because Beisil says he was it's a Neder Pesachimai. So we could say, let's see, it's going according to, so Chizkiah will say it's going like Beishamai, who says there's no, you don't say Neder Pesachimai. Rabbi Yochanan says a different text. I feel Tema Beis Hillel. It could even be going according to Beis Hillel, who said by the Hareni Nazir that he's not a Nazir. But over here, we're talking over here the reason why when he said the Taida without. I'm bringing the taida without bringing the lachme taida. He says, if I know that there's no such thing as bringing a taida without the nidrei taida, I never would have made this neder in the first place. I thought I had the ability to to not do the nidrei taida, the lachme taida. So therefore, he clearly was not a neder pesachimai. He's saying himself that I intended to really make a neder. Correct the Gemara, and if that's the case, what does it mean that we force him to bring it? Since he's saying that he wanted to bring it, he just didn't realize he could do it without the lechem. So why do we have to force him to do it? Like we said in the brisa. So he says, listen, at the time I wanted to bring the taida without the lechem, but now I thought about it and I realized it was too expensive, and I don't want to do it now. So then we say we force him because originally you intended, you made a neder, you have to follow through. Toshma, ha'omer ha'areilai toida b'loy lechem, b'zebach b'loy nechasim. Someone says, I'm makabel a toida without lechem, and a zebach without nesachim, v'amaloi hava toida b'lachma b'zebach nechasim, and they tell him, you have to bring the taida with the lechem and the zevach with the nesachim because you already made a neder. And he says, had I known, I never would have been neder. I say, we force him. The Torah says shamar ushmata. You should watch what you do and you should listen to what you say. So therefore, you're mechayiv to do. You already made a neder. You have to follow through. So Bishlam al Chizkiya Nicha. According to Chizkiya, it makes sense. We say it's only going according to Beis Shammai. But Beis Hillel says doesn't hold it twice Lashon Rishon. So Beis Hillel would say that Beis Hillel would be chalik on this. We were not quite for it. Rabbi Yochanan says that the whole reason why we said in the original brisa is because the person indicates that he meant the taka to be, but now he's trying to be chayzer. But over here, the person is saying exactly that. He's saying, you see neither. So it's not the way Rabbi Yochanan had tried to answer the first brisa that said even according to Beis Hillel. Kasha, this, I was just giving an answer that the first brisa could be talking about where he agreed that he intended to make the neder. And this second brisa is talking about where he said I didn't intend. That taka is only according to Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel would say in that case that he doesn't have to bring. What does it mean when it says that they tell him you have to bring the carbon that you originally said? Shmar is going on that you said that you have to observe what you said. That means you have to bring the carbon to you. Shemata havel lachmi. And Shemata tells you the second part that he also has to bring the lachmi to it. Rabba Amar Shmar havatoida. The lachma the lachma. No, he says Shmar means you got to bring the toida and the lachma. Shemata is telling the shloite ragel lasses came. You shouldn't make such nedarim that you don't intend to keep. It's a azhara to be careful with your nedarim. To make such a neder, where you make a neder of the taida, of the carbon taida, without the lachmi taida, it's wrong because you have to bring the lachmi taida, so therefore you shouldn't make such neder. The Mishnah had said, he v'lachman ha'maiser, if he says, I want to bring the carbon taida as well as the lechem from maiser yavi, he should bring as he said. Sak tomorrow, yavi, loy sagi the loy maiser. Are we saying that he must bring from maiser? He has a choice. It doesn't mean that yavi he must bring from the maiser. It means if he wants, he has the option to bring from maiser, but he certainly could bring from chul. The Mishnah continues, the Mishnah had said that although we're saying that if you made a t'nai, it's not really a t'nai, but you said from when you makadish, when you made the neder that you're bringing the taida, that you wanted to be able to be from Maisa, then you could bring from Maisa. We said at the end of the Mishnah, but it can't be from the actual tvua that he separated from Maisa. You can only take from the money after he was paid his Maisa Sheni. That only refers to that he's saying that he can't take the actual tvua of Maisa Sheni. Right? When a person is paid his Maisa Sheni, he gets money from it. He can't just spend the money on what he wants. He has to then take that money and bring it to Yerushalayim and buy more food to eat for Ma'aser Sheni. So he's saying if he went and bought tfuah, then he could use that tfuah and decide to give it for the lachmei taida. They say the same thing. They can't use the chitin that they bought with Ma'aser Sheni. Amalei Rebbe Ato Aimakei. So Rabbi Zera had said this. So Rabbi Yirmiyah asked him, is this really true? I would say that you can't even take from the mois, the chitin that you bought using the mois and ma'aser sheni can't be used for your lachmei toida. And I say, I understand, I'll even explain why I feel this way, and I'll even say what you were saying and say why I didn't agree with it. First, I'll tell you what your reasoning is of why you said you can use the tfuah that was bought using Mois Ma'aser Sheni. Where do you learn that you could buy a taida using money of Ma'aser Sheni? That comes from Shlomim, because the Torah says, the Torah calls the taida a Shlomim, and since you can use Mois Ma'aser Sheni for a Shlomim, and as we're going to see later on, not only can you use Mois Ma'aser Sheni, but a person is l'chatchila. The best thing to do with this Ma'aser Sheni money is to buy Shlomim. That's what he's really supposed to do. Ushlomim sham mi Ma'aser. It says a lashon by it says a pasuk. So she eat it there, and it says by Shlomim. So you learn out Shlomim from Meiser. So just like Shlomim can be eaten from Meiser. We know Mashlam and Gufa and Meiser after Denami and Gufa Meiser, and we say so that tells. But however, since Shlomim is not a tvua. Shlomim is an animal, so it can't be meiser. So too, the taida can't be brought from something that itself is meiser. So as long as it's The only restriction we have in what we learned from Shlomim, it has to be like Shlomim. The Shlomim itself is not Meiser. But when you were Paida your Meiser and then bought Nuchitin, that's also not Gufin Meiser. So that's the time in Didach that you say the money that was used to buy Chitin can be used for your that can be used for your Lachmi Taida. But Emetami Didi, but I think differently. Says I don't agree with that. Taida mehechkayav mishlam. I agree. You learn that from Shlam. Shlam mi meiser and Shlam you learn that from meiser. Masham ein min ha-meiser. Av taida ein min ha-meiser. It's not something that actually could be shlamim, but it means that something shlam is not the same. It's not from the. It's not doesn't come from tvua, which is what you use to make meiser. So too the taida or the lachmi taida can't come from what you can make meiser from. La'afuk echita and alakuk is a meiser sheni. The min meiser. So therefore, to even exclude the meiser, the chitin that were bought with meiser money, even though they themselves were not actual meiser, they were just bought with meiser sheni money. But since they're the kind of thing that can be meiser, they can't be used for your lachmi taida. Amar Ravani, hamatvis mois meiser sheni l'shlom. If someone has mois meiser sheni, right? He had tvua that he exchanged for money to bring to Yerushalayim, and he says, "I want this mois now to be for shlomim, like kanu shlomim." It can't become mekudesh kedushas damim that it now becomes mois of a shlom. My timer, the lemekudusha shlom lemechal kedushas meiser sheni. Ravami says you cannot have a kedusha of shlomim to take effect on Meiser Sheni. As we'll see, it doesn't mean that you can't use the money to buy an animal, the Meiser Sheni to buy an animal, and then be mekadesh that animal for shlomim. But what you cannot do is take your money of Meiser Sheni and be mekadesh that mois that it should have a kedusha shlomim, because it already has a kedusha Meiser Sheni. The same kedusha cannot take effect on the money, but the animal. You can say, I want to make this animal meiser a shlom, and then it gets a kedusha saguf. Meisve. But the Gemara asks on this whole concept: is this true that the mois of meiser sheni cannot get a kedusha shlom? Halakeh chayil is if shlomim. Someone who buys a chaya, which is a wild animal, which cannot be brought as a carbon, and he says, I want it to be for shlomim, which is not going to take place because you cannot bring a chaya as if shlom. He uses his Meiser Sheni money. We're talking about it where he's using Meiser Sheni money. So he bought his Meiser Sheni money a chaya, and he says, I want it to be a shlam. Or he uses Meiser Sheni money and uses it. He says, I want to buy this behema, this sheep, but I want it to be levasa taiva that I could eat it. I'll shecht it stamazay and eat it without making it into shlam. Lo yatsa or lechulin. Generally, the rule is if someone buys an animal with mois meiser sheni, so an animal has the edible part and it also has the skin. So the rule is that he's allowed to keep the skin, just like if he buys a bottle of wine with his meiser sheni money that he has to eat in Yerushalayim. We don't say that he has to sell the bottle to get more food to eat it, because the Torah we allow you to have what comes along with the meiser sheni. When you're buying the food, you're allowed to keep that. So the same thing will happen with the ar. But this person who did the wrong thing, he said his chaya, he wants to be zivchei shlamim, or he said his behema should be eaten not as a shlamim. So he doesn't get that benefit that the ar becomes chulin. So what does it mean when we say that when he wants to bring his chaya to be a shlamim, that it's not going the ar is not going to be. He's not going to get a hat. The kani shlamim. Doesn't it mean to say that it's kind of as a shlamim, and therefore really, if it was kind of as a shlamim, it really would be mater the ar. But over here, since it was a chaya, it's not going to be the case. So Gemara, so he said, so the Gemara says no. That's not what we already explained this mission. It doesn't mean to say that it would be kind of as a shlamim. Umayla yatsa ar lechulin. So what does it mean that the ar doesn't come chulin? Hari kamer. Eine betayra latzis ar lechulin. My time anasat lechech shalach harisha. The reason is not because that it was kind of because it can't that it could have been kind of as a shlamim. It certainly couldn't have been kind of as a shlamim. What we mean to say over here is that the thing you were trying to do with it, if you take your Meiser Sheni money and say I want to buy it to buy an animal to plow with, that would not that would not be it's not an approved use of your Meiser Sheni money, and therefore you don't get the heter on the R of that behemoth. So too over here, when he was trying to use the money of Meiser Sheni for a non-approved use, you don't get the heter of the chulin. Itmar hamatvis mois Meiser Sheni l'shlam. Someone who, like Rami says, someone who's trying to take his mois of Meiser Sheni for a shlamim. V'yechad amakani. Well, that's amalei kani. Rabbi Yochanan disagrees with Rabbi. He says it is kind of. Well, it's not kind. The Gemara says, according to Rabbi Yehuda, who says Meiser is really Meiser Sheni money really belongs to the owner, but it just has a restriction on it that it has to be in Yerushalayim. So everyone would agree that that's his money, according to this brisa. So he could definitely, according to this Gemara, everyone would agree that it's able to be kind of it's able to have the din of shlamim on it because it belongs to the owner. It just has a restriction. So he can then say, I want this money to become shlamim. But this whole machlekes of these Amarayim is only according to Rameh. He says Maisa Sheni Mamin really belongs to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Rebbeinu Shalom just allows you to eat it. If you go, you can partake of his money, of his meichalim if you go to Yerushalayim. So Manda Amar like Kani, the Manda Amar who says it's not kinda meaning Rebbe Lazar, he says like Rameir that it's Mammon, Maisa Mammon Gavayu, so therefore you can't make it a shlamim if it belongs to the Baishlam. Manda Amar Kani, but hit the chaylik on him, Rabbi Yochanan, he says it will be kinda even according to Rameir, even if you hold Mammon Hedger to it, Mammon Gavayu, keep the Meiser. Okay, we have to change that word. I know Meiser. Was it Karav? Keeping the Meiser Karav leishlamim. Ki mitvus leinami tafis. Since Meiser can be brought as a shlamim, and if he buys an animal, he can then bring it as a shlamim. He also has the ability to take the money and also make it to be a shlamim. Meisvei hamatvus mois Meiser sheni l'shlamim. If someone takes his money of Meiser sheni and he makes it to be a shlamim, kshu paiden. When he comes to be paided, Moisef Aleim Shnei Chumshin, Echel Kaddish for Echel Meiser. We say that it has two kedushas on it. When you're paid a Meiser Sheni, you have to add on a fifth, and when you're paid a shlamim, you also have to add on a fifth. So he has to add on 2/5. So clearly, it was kind of the din shlamim, even though it was Meiser Sheni. It's not like Rav Ami, and it's not like Rebbe Lazar. So come on, Misavas Deviakalu, Hamani Rav Yehudi. This we said this was all in Rameir who says Mama Gavayo. But according to Rav Yehuda, we said both Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Yochanan would agree that it is Matves Shlamim. So we're going in Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, we'll stop over here. Tomorrow, the same time, 7:50.
Yes, God.